Hi, I'm Laura Calder, and by now you know my husband, Peter. We're back with another video on topics food and art de vivre, and we have some questions from you that are about partly France and partly the inviting life. This goes along with my newsletter, which you can subscribe to for free on lauracalder.com. And while you're at it, please subscribe to these videos if you like them. That way, when we do one, you'll know. The first question is from Dennis Romero, and he would love to know some of our favorite restaurants and food shops in Paris. He says, I travel there at least once a year, and I'm always finding new favorite places. I would like to know some of yours.
Good man, once a year.
Good man.
Wow. Listen, we were just there, and what we discovered, the restaurant scene changes rapidly in Paris. Yeah. And a really reliable resource in this is a website called lefooding.com. Just how lefooding.com. It's in English and French. It's very discriminating. It doesn't make a lot of recommendations. It divides them up by arrondissement. They have one category called chef's creation or something like that, where it's a one chef in a small restaurant with a small staff creating something new every day with the ingredients they find at the market.
Very spontaneous, seasonal. It's not complicated food.
As opposed to bistros and bigger restaurants that tend to keep the same menu. It's really a nice way to eat in France, and it's incredibly cheap.
Some are.
Let us give you one example. We found a place, Terre. It was in the 11th, and it was one chef, his dishwasher, and one waiter. Beautiful food created that day by this cook, by this chef. The appetizers were €4 and the main course was $13.50. It was delicious. It's a lovely room, great service.
A bit of a hole in the wall, actually, but deliberately so.
It's just a nice restaurant. So anyway, that's the kind of thing you can find. We found a couple other, Vert Volet and Plume, both the same way. They're both great places. I just would recommend that.
I would recommend always check the latest Le Fooding, because there were some places we went to, a few years ago and loved, which we didn't love this time. So it's a changing scene. Next question is from Anne-Marie Wilmalacena, who would like advice on planning a trip to France, which I don't think I can give right now. But you also asked for any advice on dining etiquette tips that are specifically French. I'll just give a handful for fun, but one English tradition is usually that you keep your hands under the table when you're not using them at the dining room table. And the French always keep them above. You sort of balance your forearms on the table. Not elbows, but forearms. I'm not quite sure why that is, but I guess they want to see what those hands are up to. You should never arrive early to a dinner. They have what they call the Calder de la politesse, which is the quarter hour of politeness. I'd say at least come 10 minutes after you've been asked somewhere. If you're longer than 15, you should tell your hostess you're running late. You just want to give people that little window. So don't, if they say come at 8, it's not Germany, they don't mean it. They mean 10 after. And one other thing that I always found interesting, because we always hear people saying bon appetit, like Julia Child, but it's actually not done, because you're not really supposed to talk about your digestive system. We're not talking about eating. You come to dine. They say, would you like to come dine? Don't, would you like to come eat at our house? So you're not talking about those base activities. It's about socializing and being convivial. So those are just things that are kind of fun to know about.
Well, you had one other that I like
What?
too. Well, unlike Toronto and Canada, you don't ask a person you meet at a dinner, what do you do?
Right.
Where do you work?
You don't ask what someone does for a living.
You talk about arts and life and food and the things you enjoy. You don't reduce it to...
It's very important.
Salary and position.
It's rude, but it also means you're missing out. And I'll tell you an example. I made the mistake once. Early on in France, I was at one of those sort of village dinners, and I sat beside a guy who was absolutely fascinating. He talked about art. He talked about philosophy. There was nothing he didn't talk about. And I finally couldn't contain myself, and I said, what do you do? And he was the garbage man. So I felt like an idiot. Goes to show you. If someone says I'm a garbage man, you probably think you have nothing in common, when in fact, they have tons of stuff in common.
Right. This last question is quite touching. This is from Alexia Rudy, who once met Laura at a book signing for Paris Express, and Laura complimented her wool patchwork handbag that she got in St. Andrews by the Sea. And she says she's now a mother of 3. She was a mother of 1 back then. Her husband runs a little cafe. He is still very adept at living an inviting life with class and beauty, and he grows handsomer as the years go by. But I find I've fallen into the terrible stay-at-home mom slump, and I'm going in the opposite direction. I wonder if you have any advice for working your principles of living an artful life into a life with children. And that's a very good question. And the first thing to say is this is really normal when you have kids to go into some kind of slump like that. It's so hard to manage, especially 3 children and all their activities and their schooling and their lunches and so on.
The Inviting Life is a book I wrote. Some of you may not know about it. And it was about a way of living. It was really French art de vivre, or mindful living. If you're cleaning the house, you do it with the idea that you're improving something, not that you've got some grunt work, but you're going to make something lovely out of something that's not lovely, make the world a better place.
And Alexia might be mistaking the Inviting Life for a formality around life, but that's not the point of the book. One thing we noticed in France is families include their kids in everything, in every meal, in the cooking of the meal. It's all part of one thing they do together. You don't have separate dinner hours for children and parents. They're involved in every part of the kitchen life and eating life. They're at the table with you and your friends.
For hours, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, these dinners can go on for ages, and they're lovely. Use cloth napkins, use nice plates, but it's not the land of Emily Post. It's the land of lovely color and delight and conviviality.
Put some flowers on the table. Have
let the kids
help.
set the table and make it nice.
And cook simple but good food. Don't worry too much about what people think about the way your house appears, or how good the meal is, or how gourmet the meal is.
Embrace the chaos, but let it be a lovely chaos. It's possible. Just think a little more bohemian. I have another friend, Camille, she always makes apéro for the kids, and she gives them a colorful glass, gave them, they're a bit older now, and put lovely crudités in it and a little dip of hummus, and they'd sit and have their apéro, maybe with a little juice or something. Just make it nice, make the moment nice. It doesn't have to take much more effort than not doing it nice. But I think it's with every aspect of life, that if you can tell yourself you're morale boosting more than anything, put on something nice when you're not in a great mood, it really boosts your spirits. And it's not about conforming to rules. It's really about your soul.
Well said.
That's our round this week, and we'd love more questions from you on topics like these, and hope to see you next time. And I'll be back with a newsletter soon, so don't forget to subscribe on lauracalder.com and keep living an inviting life.
Yeah.